You're listening to Likeable Radio. Be sure to interact with us on Twitter using the handle @Likeable Radio. Now, here's more with your hosts, Dave Kerpen and Meg Redinger.
Welcome back to the Likeable Radio Show, and I'm so excited to have as our guest today Randy Rayess, an angel investor and co-founder of VenturePact, an online marketplace that connects businesses with pre-screened software development firms. I have known Randy for a long time. He is a terrific networker, and he has been a good friend to Likeable Media and Likeable Local. He's also a fellow member of the Young Entrepreneur Council, and Randy is passionate about software, marketplace startups, and remote teams. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the Likeable Radio Show, Randy Rayess.
Thanks, David. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you here today. So, Randy, tell us why software development? Tell us a little bit about VenturePact and what inspired you to start it.
You know, we were looking at, whenever we met with companies, we'd always ask them, what are your biggest challenges? And we always heard software come up as one of the top, one or two things they would mention. And what we found was that, most companies, did not fully leverage software. So if you looked at, the way they ran their operations or the way they were serving their customers, there was a lot more that, technology, web and mobile applications, and just web development in general could do to make them better off. And so we got really interested in the space and realized that if we could kind of vet the best development teams around the U.S. and globally and give people access to those teams, then empower people to build technology if we by having this kind of marketplace with all these vetted developers. So that's how we came up with VenturePact, was to give people access to the best talent and have this kind of vetting system to screen for the best people in all the major geographies.
Yeah, it's great. And I can, as a software entrepreneur myself, I can testify to the fact that finding great developers is one of the biggest, hardest problems when building a tech company. So you're definitely solving a very important problem.
So, Randy, can you tell us a little bit more about the screening process that VenturePact does for software companies?
Great question. So the main screening part has a 4-step process. I'll kind of go over it briefly, and then I'm happy to answer more detailed questions. The 4-step process starts off with a detailed review of their past clients, where we kind of speak with their past clients and understand specific nuances about the development experience. So how did the development team manage challenge? How did they go about structuring the engagement? And how did they think about remote work? So that's kind of the first thing that gives us good insight into the experience in their communication with clients. The second part is a review of their portfolio and any open source contributions that they've had. So we look into what exactly they contributed to every project. And obviously with open source, we get to see how they think about code. Then the third part of the process is a look into their tools. So what tools they use and why they use them. So as you know, remote work is both very powerful, but it is a challenge when you're working remotely. And so, in the last, I would say 7 years, we've seen a huge rise in remote work tools. So having companies and dev teams that can talk about all the tools that are available and why they've chosen one over the other is great to kind of get a sense of their actual experience about remote work. So tools is a good way to vet for that. And the fourth thing is the profiles of the dev teams and their management team. And so we look at those and see their backgrounds and the types of languages they code in and what they've done before as the individuals on the team. And with an additional test, which is the test in that part of actually vetting the skill set of the developers is through a screen share. So we'll screen share with the developers, give them an assignment. And during the screen share, you get a lot of data as you see people code about how they think about software development, about how they approach challenges when they come across a problem. They're screen sharing with you so you can see how they search and think through solving these problems. And so that way you get a real sense of their experience as coders.
Excellent. Sounds like you really have quite a good process there. Randy, we have a lot of entrepreneurs listening to the show. What's one piece of advice that you would give them as they go about starting and growing their technology companies?
Oh, sure. I would say the key part when you're focused on scaling tech teams there's a few key things. So the first is a lot of times when people try to hire more developers and scale up their dev team, they think that every developer who's good has to go into management. Then we usually recommend that they give two paths. So a developer who's really good has the option to either get into management or become a lead developer where they're still coding. It depends on, because some devs just don't want to be managers, but they're really good, so they deserve more pay, but they don't necessarily have to get into management. So that's one thing about scaling tech teams. The other part is if you want to build a tech team when you're still very small. In that case, what we usually recommend companies is to prioritize what you want done and understand that you're not going to be able to build every feature that every customer recommends with the budgets that you have when you're still getting off the ground. So prioritize, and only focus on the core differentiating features to start with, instead of trying to build too much, because most things are going to change.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. Shifting gears for a moment, one of the things that we were talking about before the break is the value of peer groups. And you and I are both a member of Young Entrepreneur Council. Can you talk about, what your experience has been in peer groups and what your thoughts are for others?
Oh, that's a great question. And I think there's a peer group is very important. And what we've started doing actually is, because we're a marketplace, we'll actually host marketplace peer meetups. So we just meet with other marketplaces and we get to share, the challenges you face, as we mentioned, with hiring or with development or with sales, marketing, whatever it may be, in a very kind of open environment. And it just helps you kind of see how other people are thinking about similar problems. So I think a peer group and a mentor group, peer group is usually people of a similar kind of stage as you are as a company. Mentor group is usually people who are a little more seasoned. And having these two groups of people to always fall back on is a great thing, especially for entrepreneurs who have just a whole host of challenges they're dealing with on a daily basis. So I think they're very powerful, and YEC is a great opportunity for people to kind of get an amazing peer network.
Thanks, Randy. We're going to switch gears to our last question that we ask all of our guests, and that's what has been your biggest career mistake, and what have you learned from it?
I love this question because we think a lot about what have we learned and what are we changing as we kind of move forward. And the thing I think we learned the most, and the biggest thing was somewhat counterintuitive to us. So what we did was, when we were starting off, we would ask the companies, okay, we're helping you with development. What other things can we help you with? And these are the customers that we're working with, right? And a lot of them, they had a whole host of things. We need marketing services. We need interns to help us with our daily work. And so we, as entrepreneurs, thought, we have to be scrappy and hustle. So our companies that we're working with need interns. Let's go above and beyond. So we then went and met with Wharton, and we told them, look, we can get your students exposure to working with these amazing companies. Can you give them class credit? We negotiated back and forth. They agreed to an experiment, and then we started marketing, and we did the whole thing, and it worked out pretty well. We got interns for our companies; they were happy. But what we realized then was that we couldn't grow the core VenturePact business as fast as we wanted to, and the reason was we weren't focused. So we got a good lesson in the opportunity cost of your time, which is that if you try to do many things, you can't grow any one thing as fast as you could have if you only did that one thing. And the way we kind of think about it is that if a girl, it's an interesting analogy that we kind of use a lot, is that when a girl walks on has stiletto heels, she actually applies more pressure on the ground if it's a sharp stiletto heel than an elephant or a truck. And the reason is that a heel has a very small, the area that it touches the ground, a stiletto heel is very small. So even though the mass and the force that you apply is much less, because the area is small, you're going to apply a lot of pressure on that one point. Whereas a truck or an elephant, they're applying they have a lot of force, a lot of mass, but the area is spread over such a large range that their pressure is actually less. And so it's the same for startups, that if you're focused on a very, very fine-tuned tight area, then you can apply a lot of pressure and beat any large company that's doing 1,000 things. And so that was our lesson, was that you got to focus on one thing and do it really well, especially in the early days, so you can get your growth rate, so you can accelerate your growth rate and grow the company. So that was a big lesson for us.
I like that analogy, Randy. But as I can probably attest to most entrepreneurs and most women, focus and wearing stilettos is both quite difficult.
Fair enough. Well, Randy, thanks so much for joining us. If our listeners want to learn more, where can they find you?
Sure. I'm on Twitter. Handle is at Randy Rayess, Rayess. And then on LinkedIn is just LinkedIn/n/Randy Rayess. And they can email, if they have questions about VenturePact, they can just email questions at VenturePact.com.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again for joining us today, Randy. And you have a super likable day.